So some 2 years back, I was asked to give a talk on my work. So that time, because all my life I've been doing entering into different fields, getting out. Every 2 years almost I was entering into a different field. And most people thought like I'm fickle-minded or whatever. So as long as I used to enjoy doing it, I continued doing it. But sometimes people try and put fear into your head and like you are doing that at that time, now you're doing this, so there's no connection and all that. But when I took stock 2 years back, I was very excited to see that the whole picture is falling into place. Many a times when you're in the thick of it, you can't see the larger picture. So like when I realized that there were three main streams I was involved in. They were never so clear. I'm in and out of various things. So when this clarity came to me, I was quite excited that there is a journey happening, there is progress happening in a particular way. So it is not totally vague. What I wanted, from childhood I used to draw cartoons and all that. So I wanted to get into commercial art. The thing is I used to fail in school also. So at home they were all worried that this guy is all the time drawing and we should try and put him into commerce so he can get a job as a clerk somewhere and earn some money. Because I used to keep drawing and like that time, meaning everything was you become an engineer or a doctor. I'm talking about the 70s. Yeah, but I failed in my 12th, so I lost 1 year. So in that time I came across an ad of a 10-day cartoon course. So I joined that course and yeah, so this was what I drew in that cartoon course. This is quite interesting. This one, when I said I'm not getting any ideas, the cartoonist who was conducting the course, Vijay N. Seth, he was a well-known cartoonist that time. He said just open the dictionary randomly, pick up 3 words and try and think of an idea with that. So that's how this cartoon came about. I think it had got one was whale, one was parent and one was food or something like that. The whole thing that you can just take few words and the idea pops up. So that was a interesting thing. This is a very naive, wait for a few minutes, they must have caught the hen by now. So these are a teenage kind of jokes. Quick, pass me 10 aspirins, I've got terrible headaches. I was quite happy with this one. God exists, God does not exist, God exists. What happened is I didn't get admission in commercial art and in fine art, so I desperately wanted to get into the JJ campus anyhow. The only building left was architecture. So I applied there and I went and failed in my 12th when I did all that. And then when finally I got admission in JJ, they said I'm on the waiting list. So I went to another college and got admission there. Those days it was very easy to get admissions, not like nowadays. So I was there in that college just for 2 days. And on the first day we had an amazing professor who asked us like what you think is architecture, and we had to write down. And then he took all our answers, he put down the words on the board one by one and went on cancelling all the same terms. And eventually he came with one sentence, architecture is design of space. The moment he said that, my mind was like totally in a different space altogether, because one is not talking about architecture as serving a function, one is straight away taking you at a higher plane. So the moment he said that, I was thinking you put a wall, you're actually dividing space, you're a creator. So that feeling is a great feeling to start off a field in, to study. So I was very lucky, and next day I got a call from JJ saying that I've got admission in JJ. So I was meant to go to that college just to hear this one man who said so this is the kind of drawing I did in my first week of architecture. That time we are shown all these how to draw trees kind of thing. And then when we were taught how to draw plans and elevations, my whole earlier yearning to be a cartoonist, I started using it in the architecture college. So these are the cartoons I used to do. That's the plan, view from my balcony. And then we were taught history, I started doing these. So Islamic, Roman, Buddhist, Egyptian. And interestingly, all these things, I used to show Midday, this newspaper that had started at that time. And I'd shown some of these to the editor. He said, we are printing all that you do. So every boring class, I used to do these ideas, and in the night go and draw them. Early morning, give it to him. By afternoon, it would be in the newspaper. So it was quite interesting. This Charles Correa, Kanchenjunga, Louis Kahn, Frank Lloyd Wright, Corbusier. Yeah, and this was a basic design thing. This was our actual professor, Professor Mulik. And this was the guy in our class who used to always aspire for A+. So this is a basic design exercise. Well, it's quite simple actually. It represents the grade that I expect for this basic design. So these I used to put up on the wallpaper, and then everybody started contributing. So the wallpaper used to be full of poems and whatnot. This was my final year architecture thesis project, which it was a building for art and architecture. Like a building which will have a fine arts department and architecture department, and it will encourage interactions. Though I was in JJ, we were not really encouraged to go into commercial art or fine arts because there were major political divisions between the two. So I wanted a place where everybody will be in that. So that's the time. This was the site was in Pune, and I started looking at the old architecture of Pune, Shaniwar Wada, and all the old colonial universities. That time you realize how much old architecture has got to offer in terms of understanding design and all that. And at the same time, I had gone to Ahmedabad and I got my first exposure to Doshi's architecture, the CEPT campus, Doshi's own office building, and NID by the Sarabhais, and it was a group of architects. And so modern architecture and traditional architecture both have tremendous inspirational value when you bring them together and you merge it with your own thinking process. These are pencil drawings. These are 2B on Scholar paper. When I recently, a few years back, I put it on Facebook. A lot of students were asking what software did I use. So there were no computers. That time even Xerox machines had just come in. So even Xerox machines, you could Xerox easily also. These were elements from the Shaniwar Wada which I incorporated into my design. This was a canteen space and the auditorium on the top. And that thing about architecture is design of spaces. I used to always think on those lines that these walls are frames which are framing. There was a hill there. This is in a place called the Baner side. Now it's all buildings all over. So as you walk, the walls start changing the frames, all those kind of, so look at architecture like that. I could never draw a bird's eye view or a worm's eye view because the building is never seen that way. So it's always draw it from how you walk through the space. And then my hero for college was always B V Doshi. Then moment I graduated, I went to work with him. Many of you must be knowing about this building, Sangat Doshi's office building. So this is where I worked for 4 years. And again, the journey of whatever I said earlier, that journey gets consolidated here. Like what I used to always tell Doshi, that he's an amazing storyteller. Storyteller in terms of architecture. He makes you actually experience movement. He brings in elements of surprise, and it's like a master storyteller because the office building is actually located on a site which is just narrow and straight. And within that, he has created maximum experiences. When you enter the site, you don't straight away walk into the building. He makes you walk away from the building. And he makes you turn at a point where you see the building at its maximum advantage, the dynamic angle of it. This is a glimpse you get of his office. These are vaulted structures. It's it's subterranean sort of. This is the point where you suddenly see the building. These are not great slides. Yeah, so what he does at this point is, you see the building at its diagonal best, and then there he puts a reflective pool. And then there's a tree covering, so it's like maximum, it's like sudden cinema scope. Like it makes, when you come in, you just get a glimpse of the office. It doesn't reveal anything. It forces you to walk away from the building. And then he has other elements there where your eye gets involved, like there's a raised lawn, then there's a sculpture, and there's interesting paving, and you get involved in that, and then suddenly you turn and you see the building. Even after you cross this, there is no it's a mystery. I'll keep trying to use this word. Normally you expect a building to walk up to and enter. Here if you walk up, you're lost because there's no entrance there. And when anybody new person comes, they'll be walking there, and we could see the person from the studio. We used to always say, Naya Bakra hai. So actually the entrance is totally underplayed. It is like you walk down and it is so this also I feel master aspects of storytelling, where he's actually playing with your emotions and your movement. And the moment you enter inside, the floor is red. So the opposites, outside it's all green and inside it's red, two opposites. And then the spaces also, the way he's lit it, it's like one scene, cut to next scene, cut to next scene. It becomes dark suddenly and then bright again. This is the kind of section that is there. Like this light here on the, this thing like periscope thing. The sun comes, hits the top, and what you get inside is a glow. So if a cloud passes by the sun, the light inside breathes, it's like goes. So that's the kind of mastery this man has over light. So one can say he's cracked the mysteries of light. He wanted me to work on representing his works in a particular style. So he had suggested miniature style. So I was not too keen on this till he told me the brief. So the villagers come and seen my building, and he's gone back to the village and he's explaining it to other friends of his, and he's drawing out a map. Now that map will be a storytelling map of his experiences. It's not a perspective drawing or axonometric the way we are taught. And it's very interesting. This is the Gandhi Labour Institute in Ahmedabad, and when I joined him, I used to be waiting at the bus stop towards his office, and invariably he would be passing by and give me a lift, and this building was under construction on the way to the office. And once when I got out from the car with him, what you see, this is the gatehouse. This gatehouse was here. It was already built. And we entered like this and we came in. There are a series of steps and this red door. That day he gave instructions to break this gatehouse. So my instant thing was, why is he breaking something which has already been made? Bakul would know about those things. Then what Doshi made me do is, he made me walk from the side. He said, walk from here and tell me what you experience. So I walked from here. What happens is, all these unfolding, they move next to you. And then you reach a point where suddenly this gets revealed. So this is where the gatehouse is. So that's the time. It's only later I understood how great a storyteller he is, because these are storytelling elements. He's making all the time. Because at the same time, I started reading Hitchcock, and I realized like this is a parallel. You can draw parallels with Hitchcock and Doshi's way of storytelling next. Yeah, that's the route. Yeah, and this also gave me opportunity to look at what Indian art has to offer. When you look at miniature paintings, you realize the British used to always say that Indians didn't understand drawing, that they couldn't draw correct drawings. But I think the Indian mind was never really interested in a factual representation. The concern was always something beyond the mind, something more about capturing the emotion rather than capturing the likeness of the place. And that's what I realized Doshi was getting into when he was, he was working on the Twin City for Jaipur, Vidyadhar Nagar, and I was developing this drawing for him. And every morning he would come and give me these wonderful sketches of what he visualizes the city to be like, and I used to incorporate it into these. So this is a big drawing, it's 3 imperial sheets. And it was great fun doing this. Like all my weekends, I used to go around on my cycle and sketch wherever I could, old structures. Advantage of being in a place like Ahmedabad is there are a lot of old architecture around and you can easily reach them. This is at Sarkej, from the outskirts of Ahmedabad. And I used to just spend time sketching, not really knowing why I am sketching. But I realized that much later, that when you're drawing this, you start understanding what is the step. You understand how these minds really worked. So what they're actually creating here is they're creating a platform for the sun to come and play, for the light to fall, and it's like a stage performance. The steps and all these guys are they're coming together to allow the light to fall and break into shadows. If you start looking at architecture like that, a whole different aspect of spaces reveal itself. And much later I came across this sentence by Le Corbusier: ancestors will speak to you if you know how to consult them. So that is, again, it links to mystery. Yesterday when I was going through all this, there are a lot of things which are mysterious about these old architecture, but when you hear a statement like that, you realize that the mysteries will reveal themselves and solve themselves if you know how to consult them. So the whole idea is how to approach them. Like if you saw in the earlier definitions, it's all about mystery, something you don't understand. So if you work out the right questions, the mysteries will reveal itself to understand something beyond. it became like the day I left Doshi's office, I went off to Jaisalmer for 15 days, and that was a mind-blowing experience. That time you really understand what India's got to offer. This was like entering into a fairy tale land with the most amazing architecture. And so I started sketching. Now, one of the advantages our generation had was photography was expensive. Like you had to process negatives and then you had to print frame by frame. So drawing was a great way of recording something. So we did a more of drawing than probably you all do now. And we were also taught perspective drawing systematically as part of now you have enough softwares which allow you to do that. All 5 years of architecture we did drawing. And I feel drawing is an amazing tool again to probe into the mysteries of whatever, because as you're drawing, you're entering into the mind of the traditional designers. And each line, when you draw, it starts revealing things. So these are the kind of drawings I used to do. And then in the night, I would sort of go into the detail and then put my thoughts on what they are. So this was like a major design class going on. So yeah, this particular one, I was in my second visit to Jaisalmer. I decided to go there in the summer because the architecture of Rajasthan is actually designed to suit the heat, to take the heat. And again, if one looks at that as a mystery, how did they do that and what they did? When you go there and you experience it, you realize the greatness of the architecture. I went there in summer and I saw people walking on the road peacefully. So I just carried a water bottle with me and a cap, and I was doing all these drawings. And it's only on the third day I realized I had got a heat stroke. Then I was down for 2 months. And so I was wondering, if they are walking so peacefully, how come they don't get a heat stroke? And then you realize that everything is built in. The turban they wear is like a shading device. In their diet, they have a lot of ghee, so that there's no way they can get, the moisture gets retained. And children are not allowed outside the house. And within the house, there are courtyards with cast shadows. The children are allowed only there. And then you realize the significance of these small windows. They are small on the outside, big on the inside. So the intensity of the light is like expanded inside. So that was a great way to understand how these guys went around designing these things. But I won't recommend it. So if you go in summer, you go totally prepared. Actually, that same month, what I told myself was, is first half of the month I'll be in Kerala, and the next half I'll go to Jaisalmer to experience extremes. In Kerala, is like more rainy season. This is the same month. This is in May. If you see, the actors are very little. There's just this sloping roof and this corner opening for cross ventilation. And the way they create variations with it, it's amazing that they have few actors, but they tell fantastic stories with them. So I started looking at architectural forms as actors, like arch as an actor, the roof as an actor, the column as an actor, and they are all actors waiting for somebody to tell a great story with them. And if you look at traditional architecture, there are fantastic stories being told. This is the Padmanabha Swami temple complex. The way the roof just comes down and cascades into the water body. And this is all my travels around Rajasthan, Gujarat. This is Bundi, Nathdwara, Jaisalmer, Udaipur. This was in Maharashtra. This is Ahmedabad. This was in Konark. I used to find this absolutely fascinating. This was a road in front of the Udaipur Palace when you come here. So if somebody wants to go to this, he can go from here also. He can go from here also. Somebody wants to go here, they can go from here, go from here. And I didn't take a photograph of this because I had run out of film and I had no money to buy more. So I made this sketch saying that when I can afford more, I'll come there and document the whole street. Many years later, when I went with the digital camera, the whole street had disappeared. There's nothing left. So it's very important to start documenting the residential part as soon as you can before they disappear totally, because the palaces will remain, they will be maintained, but the real answers to mysteries of life are in these structures. And if we lose them, we have lost the portal into the past. This is what my sketchbook looks like. So it was like a sickness. So wherever you go, you sketch. So this is all Jaisalmer along the fortification wall. If you look at traditional architecture, they have some amazing harmony and beauty in their forms, even if they are simple. It's a mystery which needs to be addressed. So the way I started doing it is try to search for a unit which repeats. So these are all. This is this Padmini's palace in Chittorgarh. It's in the water. It's just a very simple structure, but it's absolutely well proportioned. So how did these guys manage these proportions and all that? So these are my ways of entering into that zone and trying to figure it out. And you come with amazing answers, and then suddenly you read something on how music is done, what is a raga, and you link it to this and you realize this is actually music in stone. Next, this is much later, this drawing, when I had got into animation. I was looking out for kind of streets and all I could bring into the animation films. This was my next visit to Jaisalmer. So I had drawn this sitting here and see the beauty of the plinth, the way this guy can come and sit here. This one can climb from here, go on here and go up. And the way proportion scales. This is like slightly cartoony. This is not absolutely exactly what is there in front of me. Some years later, I was drawing this. I went to see Laurie Baker's building in the Center for Development Studies in Trivandrum. And then you realize this guy has managed exactly the same spirit as in the previous drawing. So what is it that is there that he has managed to tap, which most of us educated minds are not able to get? So those are also mysteries which I keep looking out for answers. This was a house I designed. So I used clay to work on this because clay is a fantastic medium. It allows your inspirational mind to function without hindrance. The moment you sit down to draft and all, the rational brain comes into the picture and it starts correcting things. If you realize what I was making you when I'm saying you're writing, I said don't pause. When you pause, the rational brain comes and says, this is a better definition, write down this. When you write continuously, your creative brain gets accessed. So that has the real answers for yourself. Because each of us are unique. To resolve any mysteries in our life, you enter into your own space of inner wisdom. And from there you get the answers which are suited for you. So somebody else may not have the answers for you. So you need to be able to locate it within yourself. Yeah, all those elements of the seat, the plinth, the steps, the arched opening. This was the dining area with a dome. This was the living room with the bedroom here. And water body falling here. And this was like a street. The back entrance to the house has got another bedroom here. The puja room is here. If we link it to mystery, my whole journey has been about trying to understand deeper answers. And when I get a certain level of answers, I immediately share it with students. So whenever I get called for a workshop, this was in CEPT in 2005, the School of Interior Design, and they gave me the first year students. The moment they joined college, 15 days they were with me, and I used all my understanding of that point of time, and these are the kind of models they made. And the whole thing was called Ancient Actors, Modern Tales, meaning you look at old actors and you tell new stories with them. And on the last day, Doshi sir had come to see what they've done. And he said, that time I never understood the significance of it. He said, I don't believe this is first year's work. He said, they've managed to tap universal proportions. So what I was doing that time without really understanding was helping them access their own inner wisdom. And the whole designs were coming from that source. So when you talk about story, fantasy and all, those are doors through which you can enter your higher realms within you. And then the kind of treasure you bring back from there is much more better accomplished than the rational brain can do. So this was another workshop I did with master students from School of Interior Design. This was called Stories Within a Story. Like if you look at Indian stories, they are a series of smaller stories within the bigger story. They are not like, say, Arabian Nights is story, whereas we have stories within stories. Like you enter deeper and deeper, and if you look at most of our traditional palaces and all, you'll find they are actually stories within stories. Like you enter into one space, it will be Chandra Mahal, you enter into another space, it will be like Kanch Ka Burj, it will be like with titles. It's like really stories with titles. Yeah, so what I did with them is I made them walk around the palace and each one with their best friend. So when they look around to see who their best friend is, I said you and yourself. So you and yourself need to walk through the palace and there's a great voice waiting to tell you the stories of the building. That's the voice of the ruler who built this and the voice of the craftspeople who did this. They are waiting to tell you answers. It's only if you tune yourself and you go there, they'll speak to you. This is another trick of revealing mysteries. When you go with yourself, then you're not chatting with others. Like I was observing them from a distance. They were like talking to each other and looking at buildings. First of all, when I said you and yourself, you talk to the building, they were sniggering away, like, what is he up to? Then when they came back saying that the spaces don't speak, there are too many tourists and all, I made them go again alone, absolutely alone, and ignore the tourists, just develop a dialogue with the palace. Then they came back with amazing experiences. So then each one had to select the space which did that to them, and then they could write a poetry, they could do a miniature style drawing, they could do anything to tell the story of the space. So this was the Kanchka Burj, was the student who did this. This was the place where the king's coronation ceremony used to be there. So he did it in a beautiful drawing. And this is Udaipur Palace, is located between the lake and the city. And this is the topmost courtyard known as Badi Mahal, the palace of trees. And this is Chandra Mahal, the room facing the moon, the most romantic part of the palace. And this is More Chowk. So this girl who did this, she said that when she was sitting in this space for a long time, the space told her that this is where all the dance used to happen and the king in the evening time. So she recreated this whole thing of how it would have been. The king is sitting here and watching the dance performances. And this one said this is where the king would be with his mistress. So mistress because this is the Mardana Mahal, Mardana where the women of the family are not allowed in. But this space was so romantic, there couldn't have been anything else used here. With a name like Chandra Mahal, the column takes on, reflects the theme, the flooring becomes very interesting, the jali takes on floral motifs. So these are things which we are sort of losing in our contemporary designs. Like you have an evocative title to a space and that whole space takes on, this was Kanchka Burj. So what she did is she took photographs and miniature paintings and then she did this collage. And then she did a film on this also. She downloaded a Rahman music and she applied it to this. Quite a beautiful film she did. So the thing is when you tap your evocative mind, it starts triggering off and going into stories, music and all that. And then the kind of spaces, your understanding of space changes. It takes on something deeper. Then again sharing it with more students. Like every place you go to in India, we are like so culturally wealthy. Though students are from Goa, they don't look at their own architecture through outsiders' eyes. You take it for granted that that's there. So when I go with the outsider's eye and I make them more conscious about what wealth they have. The balcony is one extension, like this is the balcony. Most of these old houses have this extension, a semi-private space where like it has seats, steps and a covered thing. And then when I told them to take photographs of all the balconies around their house, this is the kind of things we came up with, that each column they are playing around with. So there is no standardization and each balcony, there'll either be the seat which is important or the stair is important. So each one is telling a new story with the same actors. These are the word games I was doing, which was coming in the newspaper. And you will get amazed at how much of a story just a name can say, just the letters. Then you think, every time you think of an idea, you feel you'll run out of ideas. That's the last one you'll get. But you go deeper and deeper, you realize more ideas pop up. So there's a door somewhere, a mysterious door which you can open anytime you want and the ideas start flowing from there. Tourist, lawyer. It's almost as if it's all built in the name. Before the days of computers, the clerks used to always have a pencil on their ear. We lost a big match because this umpire took wrong decisions. That time there was no third umpire. So you had to rely on some umpire. And that time India won the World Cup. And it's quite interesting when you just get into a simple thing as a word and you go on building, it starts revealing so many other possibilities. So I was that time doing my professional practice. I was working with Kamu Iyer and we had some free time. That time I just wrote down World Cup winners and I realized that the entire team and the manager came into this. When we won, Indira Gandhi had sent a telegram to the team that India can do it. So I was writing down all the names of the politicians of that time, and I was amazed at how many ha's I got. So again, it's very strange how answers reveal itself to you if you start probing deeper. Next. Yeah, and then I got serious about cartooning. I had left Doshi and I said I want to get into cartooning properly. So there are two great gurus in India. So I said I'll learn by drawing them. So I started drawing Mario's drawings. Mario used to use a crocodile pen nib, so I used to draw his drawings through a crocodile nib. And R.K. Lakshman used to use a brush. So I was drawing R.K. Lakshman's characters also with the brush. That time I realized that Lakshman cannot draw women the way Mario draws. So if Lakshman's common man ever walks into Mario's world of women, he wouldn't know where he is. So he's running away from this. So this drawing was very important. This got printed in Sunday Midday in the center page, big thing with a write-up by the editor. Because the next time I met the editor in Bombay, that time this was the time I was working at Doshi's office and I was continuously doing these also. And when I went to Bombay and I met the editor, he called up somebody and gave me the phone. Somebody wants to talk to you. And when I took the phone, it said Mario here. So Mario wanted to know if I had cut and stuck his drawings or I had redrawn them. These are all redrawn. So then he asked for the original. That's how I became friendly with him. And for many years, I used to meet him in his house in Colaba and we used to sit on the balcony and chat away. So I always tell my students, whenever if somebody you really admire, just go out of your way to meet the person. You'll be amazed that they're actually looking forward to meet you. And later, even R.K. Lakshman became a very good friend. Friend in the sense, I was allowed access to his space anytime I want and we used to chat. And so that became like my learning experience. I call this fine-tuning your creative muscles. So I would pick up the newspaper, any title that comes, try and find a creative thing. I was fortunate that newspaper was to print whatever I gave them. Like when I left Doshi, I didn't have a bank balance. But I didn't want to go back to Bombay. I didn't want to practice architecture the way one normally ends up doing. And I wanted to stay on in Ahmedabad and join the Kanoria Center. This was it used to provide artist studios where I could explore whatever I wanted. But the whole question of how do you do it without money, and my father refused to entertain any of it. He said, if you come to Bombay, you have to start your practice and earn your own money. So then what does one do in that situation? So I was in a really totally confused situation at home, and that's the same day my room partner decided to leave the house. This was a house near Doshi's office. So everything in the house, the fridge, the furniture, everything belonged to him. So I was suddenly in this house with nothing. And so that time I felt severely unwell and I got this migraine attack kind of a thing, like not knowing what the next stage is going to be. And I tried trying to sleep very early, around 6:37. I was trying to lie down and shut my eyes and disappear. And this friend came and he knocked at the door much later and took me home. His wife and kids were outside his house, all smiling away. He took me inside and he said, now you watch the English news. Those are days of only one channel. Doordarshan was the only channel that was there. And I was wondering what he's trying to do. And the last news item was that Ajit Rao from Ahmedabad has got the first prize in the Hindustan Times cartoon contest. That was like 15,000 rupees. So that was like a huge amount at that time. Immediately I gave 5,000 to him because he was also going through. With 10,000 one could easily survive for 6-7 months. So these are all things which at that time I couldn't understand how they work. That time I'm linking it to mysteries. How these things work are something which I later got to understand. So I can share it with you at the later stage. I'm sure many of you have experienced this, that you're and you don't know where the help is going to come from and it comes out of the blue. Yeah, that is how I was, hungry but very happy. Next. And realized that I need to learn myself now, drawing. So this was another thing. These are all my friends in Kanoria Center. Every day I used to sketch one of the friends. So I had an interesting way of doing this. What I used to tell myself is the whole of the morning I used to draw continuously, whatever. If there's somebody posing, I draw that. And then in the afternoon I used to have lunch and then have a tea in the SEPT campus. And then go back like my own teacher. One can do that. One can look at one's own work through, if you can be neutral about your own work, you can actually guide yourself. So these are again mysteries of life which I was discovering in those days. So I used to pin all these up and go, and when I come back I used to pass comments on that. And by evening I used to implement those suggestions which I gave myself. Next. Then I realized that I'm getting more and more interested in capturing expressions and all that. This is my nephew, who's more than willing to pose for me. So understanding how one can get into caricature, at the same time capture different facial expressions. So the caricature of Raj Kapoor. So this is the older Raj Kapoor holding the younger Raj Kapoor like a puppet. This was the poster idea from Mera Naam Joker, where there are two Raj Kapoors holding the. And here I was exploring, everything is a curve, circle, circle, curve, graphic elements, how you can bring in graphic elements and at the same time you can also capture the likeness of the person. This is on canvas actually, this is an acrylic painting, this is about 4 feet high. Yeah, Mogambo. So, yeah, this is a lino cut. I started learning all these techniques also. Amrish Puri's chin is very weak if you see, but his voice is really thick. So when you enter into a medium and you go deeper and allow the medium to guide you, I made a thicker chin here to make up for the voice, but it didn't affect the drawing or the look. So that's the kind of freedom you can take when you get into a new medium. And if you just go on asking questions to the medium, it will tell you how to deal with the best way to go about. This was Bala Sahib Thackeray. Tiger is his symbol. He himself was a cartoonist and he developed this whole character of his, Bala Sahib. He has actually created a character. The way Sippy has created Gabbar Singh, this is a character larger than life. R.K. Lakshman has also created his own character. Other than the common man, himself he used to have a particular aura about him. It looks like Rekha, the actress of those days. So I collected, this is like, I can have a full design class just by understanding how she put her makeup. Meaning she used to do her own makeup and she had a contract with any photographer that she will decide the angles. So the photographer had to click the angles she says, and each of her photo sessions were based on a theme which she decided. Whether her eyes are important in that session or her hair or her lips. So and accordingly the beauty spot would move. So it's like it's a master design stroke, like you put the spot where you want the eye to go. And her eyes, normally one associates a beautiful eye with a bigger white. So the thickness, the lower thickness of the eyelids, she puts white color there. So the eye looks bigger. And if you see Amitabh Bachchan's eyes, they are big anyway. He's got very interesting eyes. Like most of the pupil touches the lower lid, whereas he gets much more white below. That's how he manages those amazing expressions. This is when he joined politics, he used to go with this expression. He just didn't know what he got into. Singers, before they sing the main composition, they play around with their voice. They explore variations and finally they come to the, what do you call it, riyaz. And actors also do that. I once got one actor to teach my animation students and he had made them laugh from a smile to hysterical laughter. So you explore the full range, so then for a particular situation you know which aspect to take it. Yeah, so when I did this I realized he's got ears which pop out like this, then I made it like this. And so these are just pure explorations to see what all variations you can do, like his nose can become as simple as this, it can have nostrils also. Can you make it stylized like this? This is him in Hero Hira Lal. So do this, then I converted it into clay and baked the clay. These are terracotta pieces which are then colored. So this was later, it became an exhibition. And what happened is, I was not very active on Facebook, but that time suddenly I took a decision that I'll put all my old work on Facebook. So I started. So this was one of the first ones I compiled and put it up. And next day morning I went out for coffee. There's a lovely place for coffee near my place. I stay in Lonavala between Bombay and Pune. And as I was going on the way, there were generators and all, there's some film shooting going on. I asked who's the guy, they said Nasiruddin Shah's shooting is going on. So these are again things, they are not coincidences. I feel there's something you trigger in your thing that happens. So I immediately went back to printouts and I met him. And he got so excited with this, he called everybody, showed it to them, and then he told them, like, my God, I could have got a role in Planet of the Apes. He was crying for that scene. Vidya Balan had died and she was lying in a coffin. And so when I said, can I take a picture, he put on these glasses. So that film never got made, I think. I never heard about it afterwards. But later, 2 years later, when I met him and his wife, the wife said that he has blown up and put it in his house. Again, the medium reveals itself, like this is all in terracotta and I put kite paper on it. The color is purely by kite paper, and these are painted. And so what happens is when you merge relief with this, you can also use things of a graphic nature and make it. This is just exaggerated perspective. The ball appears as if it's coming to you, but it's right there. This one was called 1 2 ka 4. There are 2 and broken into 4 pieces. Yeah, this was again talking about these mysterious elements of life, and like I wanted to get into animation. Actually, when I was doing those caricatures, one lady from Rhode Island had come and she had entered my studio and she looked at all my work and she said, "Do you know that you are actually craving to get into animation?" I never knew that, and I call these people angels. They come there, things which you don't understand yourself. Somebody comes and tells you that, and she said, "You apply at the best of the colleges." She said, "Don't try for any lesser college." I said, "I have no money because even doing all those caricatures, you hardly make it." I had a show which was a sellout show, but that wasn't even enough for a ticket to go abroad to study. So when she said that, I started applying and I got admission in 2 of the best colleges. One was CalArts in California and another one was Sheridan College in Canada, which was a shorter term course. And then one was wondering how do you go, because I was second class in architecture. I got 59.4%, so I am not a first class. So not eligible for any scholarships. For 3 years I was trying, but in the 3 years of trying I was also educating myself. There are a few books available those days. There was no Google that time. So the few books that I got, I used to study it front page to last page. And then one day there was this Bombay International Film Festival, and I was this angel, one guy who came into my life, student from NID. I became friendly with him on that particular day only. He told me, "Don't go home, we'll try and gate crash into the awards ceremony." And that was a VVIP event because the defense minister was there, and then the Disney of Europe was there. Manmohan Desai, Prakash Mehra, they were all in the audience. Dilip Kumar was there and all that. So he said, "We'll gate crash." We tried, we got kicked out. And then that Canadian guy where I got admission, he said, "You are supposed to be inside." So he said, "I'll get you a pass." He gave me a pass and I gave it to this friend because he was more excited about wanting to go in. He said, "It's not for him, it's for you." So I said, I was wondering, and then he got me the chairman of the jury badge. So he said, "You wear this and you go in." The same guy who kicked me out allowed me inside, just in the badge. So I was sitting this was in the Tata Theatre, the big theatre, and I was sitting on the steps somewhere, and this Ted Seeger, he got the first prize. It was an amazing film, and the prize money was 1 lakh. I'm talking about 91. And he just went on stage and he said, "I've heard about this Indian student who's been accepted in the best of colleges. He said, I want him to go." And I was wondering, who is he giving the money to? And he read out my name. I had never met him before. So the whole audience stood up and they were clapping. And they kept asking, "Is he in the audience?" I was too embarrassed. I was sitting in one corner and I had my hand up like this next to me. And somebody saw me and he asked, "Are you the one?" I said, "Yes." So then they said, he's here and all. Luckily, I had the sense of to remove the chairman of the jury's badge and go up. Otherwise, they'd wonder, who's this guy wearing slippers and dirty t-shirt and coming up with the chairman of the jury's badge. And so these are the mysteries of life. When next moment, and that same day I was with another friend and she was asking me my plans and all, and I was telling her, she says, "Last 3 years you've been saying the same thing, now you change your plan." I said, "Someday somebody will come and give me the money." And that same evening, she called me up the next day and said, "Don't tell me you didn't know this." I said, "I didn't know this." These are situations which happen quite often, meaning often in the sense they happen around us all the time. If we open our eyes to understand it, then we understand the kind of magic we are surrounded with. And then next month I was in Sheridan College. It was a short-term course, but it was exactly what life wanted me for. Because I was not meant to be a full-time animator. It's only later I realized that I'm meant to enter a subject, understand all the mysteries, come out and share it, and then enter into another subject, explore that. So this was perfect for me. These are my classmates, and this is a guy who had given me the Barry Parker, the one who gave me that badge. Yeah, when I came back, this Ram Mohan, he's like what Doshi is to architecture, Ram Mohan is to animation. So he asked me if I could work with him, and I said, "No, I want to travel India, sketch India and all." And then he said, "We have got a film where they want Amrish Puri to be animated." The moment he said Amrish Puri, I said, "I'm joining you." Next day I was there. Amul was launching their cheese spread, so they wanted an Amrish Puri character, Prem Chopra and Dharmendra. So this is an animated, it's about 20 seconds. Then when I left Ram Mohan, I wanted to continue with understanding Indian characters. So I met Anant Pai of Tinkle Comics. So these are the comics I did for some time. So because it's nice thing about Tinkle is they get stories from all over India. So I said, if I take these stories, I can explore the architecture, costume, and all of that region. So this was a Kerala-based story. So I got all these. We recorded a Malayalam film and got into it. So much later I visited Kerala. When you are conscious about the architecture, the costume, and all, it's amazing how much children observe. Many years later, when I was presenting this in Coimbatore International School, one kid, moment he saw these drawings, he said, can I come up and tell the story? And he actually spoke about the frames. He said there's a frame where the roof can be seen and all that. So that time it made me quite relaxed that it's worth entering into a subject with great depth, because you can actually make a difference to the young mind. And then I started exploring all aspects of cartooning, what all cartooning can do. And then this project, and that's one more thing, this is what is known as the power of attraction. You think of a thought and you start attracting that kind of opportunity and those kind of people towards you. So I wanted to explore a serious aspect of cartooning, and this project came to me that these street children, they get into intoxication, meaning intoxicants, when by the time they're 8 or 9 years old, they run away from their homes and they come to metro cities. They're actually very smart kids, and they come to the city because they feel they can earn and do something and go back and look after their mother who's being beaten by the father or something like that, or get somebody married off, some sister married off. And they actually come with the kind of scenes they show in films, why they run away from it's exactly the same. So they're bright kids who, when they reach the cities and they go through, because there's no mother anymore, there's no emotional support anymore, and then they get into other habits, and drugs is one of the habits they get into. So the idea was to help them come out of that. So these are the kind of drawings I did of the kids. I used to tell them, I'm the guy who's being paid to tell your story, and you're the director, you're the one who's going to tell me your story. Because if I do it with my understanding, it won't touch any child. It has to come from their own. So things like when the kid runs away from home, I had drawn him sitting on a seat with unruffled hair and no slippers. So the kids, I used to show my drawing to the kids and they would correct it. So they said, when you run away from home, you don't have a ticket, so you won't be sitting on the seat, you'll be sitting in some corner. And when you run away from home, your hair is well combed. It's not ruffled, it's only later that, and the slippers are there because they are used to slippers, and later they can't afford it. And there will be a feeling of an expression of excitement, and at the same time a certain level of anxiety. So all the learning I did of the facial muscles and all that came of use here. So that feeling, both the feelings I felt I could capture. And the first experience they have when they come to a city, यहाँ तो पैसा ही पैसा है, बड़े-बड़े building, double-decker bus and all that. So try to capture that first impression of the child in the big city, and then their whole journey of how they find a older kid who knows nothing better. So he takes them around, he becomes the guru, he'll teach him gambling, he'll try and get him a job, and introduces him to smoking. And this is the kind of situation they get into. You'll find these kind of situations in many of the metro cities. Till I did this project, I had never noticed them. Later, even now when I go to VT station or something, my eye goes there only. Otherwise, we generally don't. They're sniffing, this is rubber solution or something, you get a high. There are all kinds of, because they don't have money, they create new ways of getting high. And this is what happens to them. There's no aim in life anymore. They're just like vagabonds walking around. I wanted to use this graphic aspect of the Pan Spit. Most of these buildings, fantastic colonial architecture, you look at the base, there'll be this Pan Spit all over. Because what I did was I tried to walk from their height, and then you realize there's nothing exciting for them to see. Everything is dirty. This was the kid, they have an opportunity in the story to either go up in life by going to a detox or go to imminent death kind of a thing. So this guy, he decides, they have tremendous egos, so if one wants to help them, you cannot say that stop drugs. You can tell them that whenever you feel like I'm around, so then they can come to you. So this guy has locked himself out from his opportunities and then finally he dies. I had done a dying sequence with light coming, like Do Aankhein Baraha Haath and all that. And when they saw the drawing, they said, these kids don't die like that, and nobody is bothered about them. So then I did this drawing from a low angle with these guys walking. He said only the few close friends will be around. And this is myself. I'm like a social worker in the story. They said if there's somebody like you, we can, open up to you. So he's the one guy who's with the child. This is the whole story. This kid has come from the village, and he meets this guy who's already on the road. Together they become friends. They have an opportunity to go up in life, but they go down and get into intoxicants. And then this guy decides to go to the detox and goes up to a better future. This one goes down and dies. So this drawing had a great impact on the kids. When they did workshops with this all around metro cities in India, then Bangladesh and Pakistan and Sri Lanka. This was later in animation when UTV decided to expand. They asked me to train the first batch of 40 animators. I only selected each one, and the next year Toons Animation, this is now one of India's biggest studios in Trivandrum, they called me to train another 40 animators there. And so these are now among the top guys in the industry. So how do you groom somebody? Again, I'm trying to get back to the mystery aspect. Like, how do you tap your inner recesses in your mind and tap your own creativity? Once you've found how to tap your own creativity, now you're in a situation to help others tap their creativity. That becomes another totally new area. It's not very easy, so one needs to work out ways in which to do that. So my whole idea was not to groom them only in techniques of animation, but bring out their creative abilities as storytellers, character designers. So this was an interesting 6 months program where they had acting, they had a whole lot of... Because eventually an animator acts through the pencil. So you need to be good in your drawing and you need to be good at understanding emotions and acting. Yeah, these are the kind of drawings they end up doing. And, so because of my background in architecture, sculpture, they end up becoming quite good at all that. And at the end they draw drawings which I can never draw. So after a point I stopped drawing because there was no point in me drawing anymore, because they're doing things much better than me and much more variety and variations, because each one was tapping their own creativity. These are the kind of stories they developed which was meant to become into TV serials. I'm talking about 96, 97, 98. But they didn't happen at that time. This was a Maharashtra-based story. Because what I did is each student, whichever region he's coming from, they should be able to create a characters and story from that region. So what happens is, whatever material we create, we are also strengthening our cultural inheritance, the architecture of the region, the costume of the region, the stories of the region. This was a student from Manipur who got a folk tale from Manipur, and this was his grandmother, which he made into a cartoon character. This was a student from Bihar. Gonuja is the Birbal of Bihar. There are fantastic stories of Gonuja. Each student used to do a 3D model of that, and because I went into all that, I could groom them very easily on this. It doesn't take much. We always think that I'm not an artist and I can't draw, I'm not a sculptor, I can't draw. But I have come to the conclusion that we all have the potential of being able to draw well and sculpt well if we are groomed in the right manner. We may not be doing very exciting drawings, but we are capable of doing freehand drawings of a high level of accomplishment. This was a character we developed, Marty, based on Kamal Haasan kind of guy. That was his girlfriend. It was based on the heroine from the film Chemmin. That was the villain, Karpan, and his sidekick Timil. Timil breathes fire and is green in color. So whenever this guy positions his cigarette, he tries to light that up and he misses. And these are all different students get into the same idea. One student will develop an idea and then I bring in more students and ask them to explore. So what happens is you get a combination of creative minds focused into one. This was a gag done by another student. It's like Karpan has managed to get a treasure map, and Timil comes running and he does kusur something in his ear, and the fire goes through and burns the map. So in animation you need to also know how to do these gag kind of ideas. And this was Karpan's den. So it's like a crab shaped island with this, and whenever this is shown there will be lightning in the background. So they studied the architecture of Kerala, stylized it, developed the whole architecture of the region, and then his den. And this was another interesting story developed by a student. This is Vaidyan. In Kerala, you have this form, Kalari, the martial arts. And most of the Kalari teachers are also doctors, because if you get hurt, they should be able to, help the person. So this is an old Kalari expert who's also a doctor. He's managed to get the Sanjeevani. and is going around helping people live. So nobody is dying anymore. So Yama is facing unemployment. So the whole idea is how to get the Sanjeevani away from him. So I got a Quranic scholar to come and talk on Yama, and it turned out he's got a sister called Yami, and he's got two sidekicks called Chanda and Munda, and then he's got Chitragupta anyway. So there's so many aspects of our own culture which are totally mysteries to us. We don't know because we don't tap into it. And when you tap into it, there's an amazing, amazing depth of riches which can really, make us shine anywhere in the world. The world has not seen these kind of ideas. This is Chanda and Munda. This is a drawing by the same student who developed the idea. I asked him to go to the Padmasambhava Swami temple, study the mural and develop the den. Yama's den. And this guy is in Tayyam. Such culturally rich, within a place like Kerala itself, there are so many variations. Tayyam is a dance form where the makeup is put in a particular way. So this guy is made up in that manner. This was a comic book we developed with all the students' ideas put together. This is Current Vasu. There's a guy in Trivandrum who's called Current Mohan. He has these live shows where he's bare-chested and he's got wires around him and they go on increasing the voltage and nothing happens to him. So one of the students got the idea that we'll develop a superhero kind of character called Current Vasu, who's got current flowing through him. And then, so we gave him a girlfriend who was based on the receptionist of that studio. And she's a physics teacher, so she knows when to diffuse the current. So next. And he fights Mohanlal style. I was asked to develop toys in Orissa, and when I went there, it was quite a shocking experience for me. There's a fantastic traditional toys, and I was suddenly imposed on them that this guy from the city is a great designer, he will come and tell you what to do. And I was forced to do all these Kapil Dev and whatnot. It is a paper mache, this is done out of coconut coir, this is done out of paper pulp, it has a counterweight made out of cow dung, and his head moves in the breeze. Actually, it's a traditional form which I adapted to this Kapil Dev, but I was miserable doing all these Kapil Devs and all when they have such a beautiful form. So that time a very interesting thing happened. I was totally nervous when I realized the scale of the workshop. Kelucharan Mahapatra, the famous dancer, was supposed to inaugurate it, and it was hugely funded, and the audience was going to it. A half-page ad had come out in the papers. When I was invited, I thought I just have to go to the village, sit with the artists, learn from them and do, but it turned out to be something else. So the previous night I was so nervous and I started modeling the clay which was lying there in the center of the village, thinking nobody is awake, and so just to do that next day I don't appear like I'm fumbling. So when I was doing that, one artist saw me and he came and he called everybody. So suddenly I was surrounded by all the craftspeople, everybody looking at each of my movements as if I'm some master. And they have been doing it from childhood and for generations, and this guy comes who just does. So they were getting more and more miserable. And so I was thinking what to do, and I remembered that Anil Kapoor. So I tried to do that Anil Kapoor from memory. Suddenly one of these guys, he asked me, is it Anil Kapoor? So I nodded my head excitedly, yeah, it is Anil Kapoor. And then he touched my feet. He said, Aaj se aap hamara guru. And that was very shocking for me. Like he's saying, I've come here to make you my guru, that this is no big deal and all. So then he said a beautiful thing. He said, "Aaj se hum dono bhai bhai." Forget guru, like bhai. So that is the kind of relationship the Western trained mind, most of us from the cities, need to adapt when you're going to traditional artists. So it's like two brothers, but the one has to be very clear that the elder brother is them and not us. Because we are ones who are more intellectually thinking, whereas there's something beyond the intellect which they are inheritors of. And if we want to really be an integrated human being, there's a lot we can learn from them. So I was kept on looking for opportunities where I can get into that zone. I was asked to develop leather puppets in Karnataka, and I told myself that this time I'll actually collaborate like two brothers. But when I went there, I realized there are no makers anymore. There are no people who can do the leather puppets. So, and I was forced to do the designs without any help. So what I started doing is I said I'll use the old puppets as my collaborators. I'll study from them and I'll collaborate with the puppeteer from the past. So somebody who was there 100 years back, I'll collaborate with him. First I'll understand what his language is. And then in India, one more sad thing is there's no enough documentation. If you want to see these puppets, that time I didn't know about Chitrakala Parishad. Chitrakala Parishad is one of the best collection of leather puppets. Whenever you get time, go and take a look at it. It's an absolutely amazing form, and it's got lots of designers. I call them sophisticated designers. Generally, we dismiss of folk art as something which is like crude and all. That's what has happened now. But if you look at the older forms of the folk art, you'll be amazed at their sense of design. And again, in these kind of projects, there's no money. These guys told me they can pay me only 3,000 rupees. So if I can finish in 5 days, I can do some characters and push off. So I told them, you pay me what you're paying, but I'll take 3 months. So in the 3 months, I decided to study as much as I could. So I try to get into what is a traditional art form. Again, these are mysteries which reveal themselves only if you enter into the door, and like that whole statement of Corbusier, ancestors will speak to you if you know how to consult them. So that's the trick. So these are Jain miniature paintings, these are the Karnataka style, these are Chitrakati paintings from Maharashtra, the Pahadi miniature painting, Chaur Panchashika painting from Rajasthan, Kalamkari painting from Andhra. If you enter, you'll get amazed at the kind of wealth there is in this country. I earlier spoke about architecture, now I'm talking about art. And this, I just decided to study horses. This is Fud painting of Rajasthan next, Kalamkari, Karnataka leather puppets, Chitrakati painting, Maharashtra. So even if you take one element, you'll be, it's mind-blowing to see the kind of things you've explored next. These are the kind of designs I started doing for the story that was selected. So I got in my background, my own uniqueness to it, like my understanding of cartooning and my understanding of other. Well, the greatness of traditional art form is they are absolutely faithful to the material they use. Like in leather, you can't go beyond a particular size of cutout thing because then the leather warps. So if you see their designs, it's almost scientific, the negative space that they work out. This is translated onto the leather. This is goat leather, one of the biggest ones. This was the city where the story is based. So I made this whole big thing. And it is punctured. So when they take it away from the curtain, you get these amazing shadows. This was again in 96, I think, 96, 97. But this play is still being performed. It is in Kannada. It was called Kate Anta Madhusha. And then later when the Maharana of Udaipur asked me to do a project on reviving the crafts of Mewar, that time I said I'll do it my way. But again the situation is the same. They'll say this is an NGO kind of project, there's not sufficient funds. And within 10 days or 15 days you have to finish the whole thing. So one has to do the most that one can do. Luckily for me, I had already studied most of the forms of Rajasthan. Every region has a stories, folklore of that region, which is expressed in the forms through the medium that they create. So stories are the actual content of the form, whereas nowadays when we look at folk art, traditional art, we are concerned more with the form and not with the content. It is like a dead body for me without the content. So we need it's very important that we understand the content and we document that also, and we understand its true significance to bring it out in a. So these are the 5 guys I worked with. One was Molela terracotta, Coward. This was Pichwai painter. This was a Fud painter, and this was a Mewari miniature painter. And that's myself with a Dakota turban on my head. And this is how the workshop went. I can share the process. It's again the same thing about entering your deeper intelligence. What is interesting with the folk artists, they are already there. They are like children actually. The children, if you see, they are already in their creative space. It's we who mess them up and bring them out of that and put them in a rational space. The same thing is there with folk artists. They are like the guys who are not corrupted by the middlemen and all. You find that quality in them. They are living very pure thoughts, and so it was a fantastic experience for me working. This is a Raja, not a Raja, it's a Maharana, because Udaipur has this whole thing that the king is not the main ruler. It's Shivji who's the ruler, he's just a custodian. So it's not called a Maharaja, it's called a Maharana. And this is the collaborations I encourage between them. Like they were the same gods, but they do it in different mediums. So this is the terracotta guy who's familiar with the 3D thing. He's collaborating with the painter. So now his god is got 3D form and the color also. So the coming together of the two. So I used to call this tradition amplified when you bring two. So I don't get into touching any of these because I know nothing about their gods and I know nothing about the level of medium that they can work in. So I just was playing the role of the felicitator, allowing them to collaborate and come out with design next. This was another interesting story. So the coward maker and the Mewari painter collaborated on this. Shah Jahan, when he was Prince Khurram, his father was out to kill him. He went to Udaipur and he asked for protection and he stayed in the palace. This is known as Jag Mandir. So apparently he was in hiding in this palace, which has the dome the same as Taj Mahal. So what they say is, so this whole story, as it reveals itself, coward is a fantastic form. It's a storytelling device. It's a series of frames. As you go on opening, the story reveals itself till finally you reach the central core of the story. If it's a god, the story finally reveals itself into the deity. This was a collaboration between the terracotta guy and the pitchwai painter. This was done in an amazingly limited time. That's again the greatness of traditional art forms. They know exactly their medium. They know how to bake it correctly, because it was on the last day and this guy had not yet baked this piece. I said, how can you? Because the way I was taught is baking takes all night and so many hours. He did it in half an hour. He baked the whole piece in half an hour. And this guy, the pitchwai painter, painted this in less than half an hour. So the time the Maharana walked in, this piece was just put there completed. This is a studio I have set up and we're working on it to how to crack further mysteries. This was a project I worked on with Professor Walter Spink, is the world's greatest authority on Ajanta. All these murals have fantastic stories to tell about the jewelry of the region, the costumes of the region, and the lifestyle of the region. How do you tap in and bring out what was there? Just see the jewelry and all. This is not the artist's imagination. This is actually a documentation on the walls. The real jewelry, real textiles. Real textiles in the sense there's ikat, there's bandhani, there's batik. All these existed at that time. This is around 450 AD. Yeah, the king's Abhisheka ceremony. So how do you enter into a subject like that? Now this one, how do you study it? So where do you start? So what I did is isolated the image, tried to study that image, and then start putting it together. Supposing only hairstyles. So just study hairstyles. Next, 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 next. These are the male. In Ajanta, interestingly, the male and the female both have the same face. But you can still make out where is the male. These are the male headgear. Next, next. Yeah, so what we tried to do is, I had a fantastic team with me, a very small team working with me. So what we did is the stylization, we tried to make it real. Supposing it is real, so we are actually walking into the mural and experiencing what life was like there. This is recreated what the king would have looked like. There's a villain in the story. Walter has done this amazing story of how the feudal lord kills the king who patronized Ajanta. His son is forced to become king and is trapped with a dancing girl and he is killed, and his son 11 years old is on the run and the Kalchuri dynasty king comes and saves him. These are stories we have never heard of. We have never heard of Vakatakas. Vakatakas, according to Walter Spink, is the golden period of Indian art. Generally in history books we are taught that Gupta is the golden period. This is the villain in the story, the villain's son actually, who goes as a spy next. This is the king who is not willing to become king and is trapped by a dancing girl who is actually the mistress of another king, and he led into war and he's killed. Next, next, next. The resident monk there. These are scenes from the story. The whole thing was to bring it alive, and the same thing about, we go back to that statement, ancestors will speak to you if you know how to consult them. So we can actually enter into that space, and it's like a time machine. We have the device within our head to solve all kinds of mysteries. The architecture of that place, trying to recreate that also. King's victory procession. So for this we read Kalidasa. Kalidasa describes our entire victory procession. And we had some of the greatest scholars in India coming to my place. It's a one-bedroom house in Bombay, for the living room where all the artists were sitting. But these great guys used to come there to guide us on. Professor Davlikar, Professor Jamkedkar, Walter Spink himself used to come. And this is the current project I'm working on with slum children. Actually, the mysteries that we speak about, the answers all these kids have. Till a particular age, there are no secrets to the kid. And if you want to really learn about the mysteries, the best way is to learn from the children. The children are still tuned and they are in line. So if we want to get answers, they are the best portals or mediums through which we can get higher answers. Thank you.